Hello, everyone. I will get the chat in just a second. Post on Twitter. Is this readable? Okay, I guess it is. You guys see what are we looking at? You guys can see. Okay. Let's get the chat. How's it going, Turtle? Turtle, are you working on more Squid Invasion? On Squid Invasion 2? Is up good at petting cats? That's a pretty good skill to have. Very useful for video games these days made by millennials. Actually, are there that many cats? I know like you can pet the dog is a big meme. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have as much to say. I cut out some of the suggestions that I just don't have as much experience. I don't have enough experience with the genre or something like that. Like survival was one suggestion that I just like haven't played very many. I haven't played like Valheim and stuff like that, which I assume is what people mean by survival. I'm guessing they don't mean like survival horror. So, so yeah, I know what I'm talking about with these, but some of them I just feel like are simple. We'll see. Like, how much can you say about explosive barrels? I guess you could say a lot. I can imagine some people saying a lot about explosive barrels. I don't know if I have a lot to say about them. Anyway, what's going on? What are you guys playing? Let's let people roll in. Do I need to play some Minnow? Some more Minnow? While we wait for a minute. Hello, Misa. Hello? Okay. Okay, I haven't played this game in a minute now. I'm not gonna know how to move at all. I'm also gonna do that. Okay. Great start. Great start. Actually, what I should actually do. Should I say this? Never mind. No, I'm just gonna say it. So I submitted Caramel Action to Shmup Slam, which is coming up. So I should actually be playing that because if I'm kind of confused right now because it seems ridiculous to like for it to be a 1 week away from the event and not know if it's actually if it's actually going to be in there or not. But I assume it's going to be in there because it seemed like, you know, if you're willing to show up for the event, he kind of lets you do whatever you want. But I don't know. Maybe he maybe I'm beefing with Mark and I'm not aware of it or something, and they'll just reject it because it's me or something. Or maybe maybe Caramel Action is just not enough of a shmup, you know. But I've seen stuff that's not really a shmup at Shmup Slam in the past, so I'm pretty sure it's fine. But anyway, if that's happening, like I definitely need to hop on that because I haven't played it since I got the 2-all. I was like ready for a break when I got the 2 all. But I actually do want to play some more. I've been kind of itching to play some more. So stupid. So stupid. Let's try to do a little better. Wait, did I just hallucinate that? Did the number just go up? Where I died? Too greedy, man. That happened to you once? I wonder, yeah, I wonder if that's a bug with like the next one spawning in on top of you. No, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen that before. Oh, how's the, can someone tell me, is my mic picking up the keyboard sounds? Because I know last week it was, but I think I have the noise canceling working now. So maybe it shouldn't be picking them up anymore. Or maybe the keyboard sounds are so loud that it doesn't really think of them as background noise. It thinks they're like the focus of the stream. Locking in. I say that and then I start making very questionable decisions immediately. Yo, we survived to this guy with a terrible pace. I feel like whoops. I feel like I was usually well into the 60s by the time that guy showed up. How's it going, Monk? Yeah, you've seen that before. Okay, well, it sounds like it might be making it a little quieter or something. I don't know. Okay, maybe we should try to get started. So, so last time I blamed, last time I copied the list of things, the list of trends from Ziad, so I could just blame Ziad when something didn't make sense. If I didn't really think it was a trend or whatever. I don't know. I spent a lot of time wondering whether things were actually trends and things like that. But in the end, like it's kind of on Ziad, right? And this time, I asked you guys. I asked my my loyal fans for some more trends to talk about. So I'm just gonna not, I didn't try to prune them so much. I kind of just took what you guys gave me, the ones that I felt like I could say something about, and I'm just gonna blame you guys for any complaints that people have. Yeah. Yeah, we might I don't know. I mean, I think some of these are definitely not as like mainstream. Well, maybe they are. I guess everyone can figure out something to say about these things. There were some of the suggestions were a little more obscure, but maybe I cut those ones out or something. I don't know. I guess Zach, someone Ziad might not necessarily have something to say about that. Anyway, okay. Okay, 3D movement platformers. I feel like there's more prefacing I should be doing about this. I feel like I should be hyping it up. I guess I'm just a bad streamer. I don't know how to hype things up. Okay, 3D movement platformers. Also, collectathons. These weren't like these were not in this order when I made it, but it I guess alphabetized. I guess it alphabetized them, and so now these are right next to each other when they're kind of like the same thing almost, or at least they're strongly connected. Pseudo regalia likes. Well, I haven't played that yet. So when I okay, let's clear up what a 3D movement platformer is. I guess the first thing you think about is obviously Mario, like 3D Mario games and stuff like that. Banjo Kazooie and whatever. But there's also, like Mirror's Edge is a 3D movement platformer. What's that? Ghost? Is it Ghost Runner? Ghost Runner. There's that one that I've been seeing like gameplay of very recently. That's like it's all very brown looking, and you're moving really fast, and you're wall jumping, and you're sliding and stuff. I think it only has a demo out right now. It's some indie game. I don't know what that's called, but it looks cool. All those things I guess are 3D movement platformers. I feel like I have to. I feel like if what we're rating is 3D movement platformers, I feel like I have to include stuff like that. And Mirror's Edge is cool. I agree with what Gabe Gazillo was talking about in his baby steps GDC talk, where it's like, it's probably. I mean, I haven't played the mod that he was talking about in that talk, but it's probably a lot more fun to play a game that's like Mirror's Edge movement, but in a mod that is just like a random mess of like objects that you have to explore around yourself, and it's not remotely clear like what you can even do and what paths are possible and whatever. Like it's much more exploratory. It's much more like testing, pushing you to the limits of what you can do with this movement system, right? Whereas Mirror's Edge is just too obvious at all times exactly where you're supposed to go and how you're supposed to do everything. Also, it has like gunfights and stuff. Yeah, volume. Yeah. Thanks, Gate. Yeah, that game looks cool. But yeah, and I feel like that's kind of the problem with 3D platformers in general. Like the in Mario 64, you have to make your own challenges to make it to make it really interesting, right? You can kind of just walk. I mean, I'm not going to pull it up. You guys can imagine it, but picture Bob on Battlefield. I'll pull it up. Like I mean, these 3 seconds that we just watched right there, that kind of encapsulates Mario 64 in my mind, where you're just walking from place to place, and like, yeah, like if you of course there's a lot of fun to be had in the game, right? But the way that you have fun with Mario 64 is not by like just doing the objectives and following the obvious level design. The way that you have fun with Mario 64 is you like try not to press the A button, right? Or just try to take shortcuts in general. Like, if you were to try to go up here right off the bat, if you were to try to like go up that slope to the left instead of just following this obvious path. But like, you guys know what I'm saying. This is the general vibe of 3D platformers in my mind. Follow the arrow, and you can kind of just walk around. It does get a little less like this as the game goes on, but it's very different than what I typically like in a platformer. Not that I want it to be precision platforming like I'll talk about later. You might recognize this meme, which I think is very funny. But I guess I would like I guess extending the idea about the Mirror's Edge custom map that kind of it's unclear what's even possible and you kind of just have to explore on your own. Like that would maybe be the an interesting way to deliver a 3D platformer or to structure a 3D platformer around that kind of experience. But also it could be, you know, I would like a 3D platformer that's someone made this image on Twitter recently of like what a 3D what a three I think how they posted it was how they subtitled it was what a 3D Ghosts and Goblins would look like, which is funny because Maximo exists and is literally 3D Ghosts and Goblins, except at the same time I get the idea, right? It's Maximo is not really, it doesn't really feel like Ghosts and Goblins. And yeah, what they showed was like a really condensed space. It almost looked like Post Void, right? And I thought that was funny because you know, Post Void. I wrote in my Post Void essay that it's very Ghost and Goblins like because of this constrained kind of space. The fact that you're in these tight hallways, like the fact that the space is so limited and you really have to contend with the enemies that you're walking past. I mean, it gets a little more complicated in the late game, so let's show that different types of enemies and stuff. You know, if you can imagine how different this would feel if it were as open as Mario 64, right? It's the fact that it's constrained in these kind of hallways that makes it feel kind of Ghosts and Goblins like, which to me is just how I would generally like games to feel. Like I want the game to push me into doing interesting, challenging things and having to use my brain instead of just expecting me to find my own fun or whatever. So yeah, you can imagine like a 3D move. I mean, you could say Post Void is a 3D movement platformer. You're moving around in 3D and jumping, but like I don't think that's a serious a serious way to think about it. But you could imagine a game that really is a 3D movement platformer that's a little more like this in some ways, right? And maybe has a scoring system even, maybe, you know, has like randomly generated spaces for you to move through and has a scoring system for how quickly you can get through. Maybe it wouldn't just purely be a speed running thing. You know, maybe there would be like optional things that you could get on along the way. But yeah, some kind of way to make it feel like this. I feel like that's possible. There is kind of a weirdness around 3D platforming in general, where, you know, in a 3D game, the camera is an issue, right? Like in a 2D side-scrolling platformer, the camera is just not an issue, right? Whereas in 3D, I wonder how much of the fact that 3D platformers have developed the way they are and are usually these big open spaces. I wonder how much of that is just because it's annoying that the camera would get stuck on a bunch of stuff, and you know, you wouldn't have as much freedom to look around and things like that if the space were more enclosed like Post Void. But I kind of feel like those problems can be solved. I feel like it just hasn't been done yet the way that I want it to. So I guess the way that I feel about 3D movement platformers is I like them in theory, and I haven't played one that I like. Let's see. Anyone have more to say about that? Does that mean we can hype your videos now? Is that like a YouTube feature, or do you just mean like hype my videos? You can always hype my videos. Yes, yes, yeah. I haven't played a lot of these things. I mean, White Knuckle, is that really a platformer? I thought that was more a climbing thing, but I actually don't know. I've played Knight's Try. That kind of feels like Ghosts and Goblins in some ways, but it's really not about the movement, I feel like. Yeah, yeah, the Frog Clan map. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff that I need to play that seems more interesting in this category. You want more games that control like super Ghosts and Goblins, set jump arc, but you have exactly one double jump to change your trajectory. Yeah. I really don't like Super Ghosts and Goblins, like everything else about it, but that is a really cool thing that's like unexplored, you know? I feel like I feel like there's a lot that could be done with that. Counter-Strike Surf is a 3D movement platformer. Yeah, I haven't really gotten into that, but I think it's cool. How's it going, Don? Yeah, maybe this is just a failing. Maybe this is just a personal failing that I haven't played the right ones. I'm kind of feeling like there are cool ones out there. I feel like I have to give it at least a B. I mean, what else? What else have I played? Thoughts on the 3D camera and Galaxy and 3D World? Well, 3D World is just fixed, right? I mean, it's not fixed, but it's at a set perspective pretty much and follows you around. I mean, I don't know. It does different things in different contexts, but it mostly just follows you around, right? Like an isometric kind of perspective. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. So Lorne's Lure and White Knuckle. What's oh yeah, Baton Brutal or Baton Brutal, however you're supposed to say that. I have tried that. That was also just a pretty simple. I don't really want to call them a movement platformer unless the movement's kind of complex. Here's another problem with 3D movement platformers that I don't know if it's just the ones that I've played or something that's almost inevitable about the genre. Like, surely it's just the ones that I've played, though. Like, Mario Odyssey is the perfect example. There's just really powerful strings that you do. There's kind of just the optimal string of moves that you do that solves or it's the best thing that you can do in like very many situations, right? When you're trying to cross a really long gap, you just do that one string of moves where you do the long jump and then you throw the hat and then you dive and then you throw the hat again. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you know, I wonder if that's a problem that would arise if you were trying, even if you were trying to make one to my taste, like I was just describing with the post void kind of like cramped space where you're trying to move forward quickly or whatever. I don't mean to be super prescriptive about that as like the one way to make 3D platformers interesting, by the way. Like I just think I was just trying to point to some possibility of like a structure for 3D movement platformers that I would like more than the typical one. But yeah, I guess that's where you can just have you can just design different kinds of constraints that make you sometimes not want to do that full jump or whatever. You can design around it. I'm convinced. So yeah, I guess here's the other thing. What I've been everything that I've been saying about 3D movement platformers so far is just how I feel about 3D movement platformers, right? I've been trying to imagine ones that don't exist, but it's still just like how I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not really rating this. I'm not really talking about this as a trend. I have to always remember. I have to remember that we're rating these as trends, right? Like I ended up rating cozy games as S tier and stuff like that because even though I don't really care about it, I think it's a positive trend for video games in general for this thing to exist, right? So do I think this is a positive thing to exist, or like how positive or negative do I think it is? The Yeah, like the trend as it exists. I don't know. Looking at that volume game, I feel like it's a positive thing. Um, Also, I'm remembering some Roblox game that was like a really popular speed run for a little while. I, there's like random Roblox games that blow up for speed running all the time, and I feel like probably people around here don't even hear about them because it's all super like Gen Alpha doing it. Anyway, does Neon White count? Yes, probably. I haven't played it. Does it? It just has like a jump and a dash though. I guess it has like cards, right? You have cards that give you dashes and things like that. Is that right? Ooh, Titanfall. Yeah, man, this is so complicated. to there's so many things that could theoretically be considered 3D movement platformers. Okay, let's limit it to like it's really a platformer. Okay, like we're not going to do Titanfall, we're not going to do Post Void, like I was saying, and like really about the movement. So like if it's just a jump, I don't know. Like it has to have like reasonably complex movement, like Mario or whatever. I think. Okay, we gotta move on from this. I feel middling about it. I'm just gonna leave it in B tier for now. Collectathons. Now, it's funny because this is almost the same thing in my mind as 3D movement platformers in a way, but I think I'm gonna drop it in F tier. um, because I think most games that I okay when I'm talking collectathons, I'm talking about the structure, the collectathon structure, right? I'm not just looking at all collectathon games that exist and seeing how interesting they are. I'm more so thinking like if these games had a different structure, would they be better, right? Or if this did not exist as an option, would games generally be better, or if it weren't like a trend? Um, and I kind of think it leads to games being worse because people like it. You know, if it feels good, you get the dopamine hit when you're constantly running along through a string of like coins that the designer put there in the level. But like it really changes how you okay. So first of all, I'm not just thinking like, oh, 120 stars. Like if a game has a structure that's just like, you know, there's 120 total collectibles. And I know I'm saying this as if it's Mario 64, but Mario 64 is not an example of what I'm talking about. Like, let's just say there's 100 total collectibles in the game, and they're each like a reasonably involved challenge to get to, and it's almost like each one is just a level, right? Like that's kind of different. I wouldn't really consider that a collectathon. I feel like for it to be a collectathon, it has to have like a bunch of different types of collectibles. Like it has to have like the Banjo-Kazooie music notes almost, right? And like get all 100 coins in Mario 64, or like Mario Odyssey where like there's so many moons. There's so many that they don't really feel like a level. Like a lot of them don't really feel like a challenge. You're just walking around and then you get one. You just kind of get one. You just kind of get one every like minute. And that to me is this kind of gross like drip feed. Like you got me on the dopamine drip, right? um and I think that the mindset that gets you into as a player, obviously you can break out of this mindset and just try to play the game in a way that's fun and ignore the collectibles. But the mindset that design is like trying to bring you into, and at least for me, I like to give a game a chance. Right. I like to give it a chance playing it the way that it clearly wants me to play it. So the way that it ends up feeling for me, at least for the first however many hours playing until I decide to play my own way, is like it's this hyper focus on the rewards that takes you out of the world, right? Like you're looking, you know, you're looking at all these shiny objects, and you're so focused on the shiny objects all the time that you're not engaging with the world in a way that I think would be interesting for like a 3D game, right? Yeah, I want to have this. I want to have this kind of broader view and like zoomed out type of view, right? But when I'm just following the little string of coins that the designer has placed to lead me in this particular way, it's like, okay, I'm just yeah, you guys get what I'm saying. It's a very different vibe. It's a very different vibe. And it feels kind of hollow and gross. Now, is there some other reason why I would maybe rank this higher? Is there some reason why maybe you would want to make your game into a kind of collectathon? I'm not sure. I think generally just generally in games I want a slightly bigger like chunk of challenge at a time, right? I don't want my current goal to be to get from this music note right here to this music note that's also just on flat ground, you know, uh 20 steps away. I want like kind of a problem that I have to grapple with. Like I see a star at the top of this tower, but it's the tower is really complicated and I have to figure out the best way up it. Like, you know, that's just a meteor problem for me to be thinking about, and I can actually engage. I feel like I'm actually engaging with the game and with the world for some period of time before I get into my like shiny object dopamine mode again. Good faith argument for Collectathon. Mario Galaxy purple coin challenges, which are about dopamine spike spinning coins, but also require running a comb over the playing space in a hypothetically interesting way. Okay, I don't really remember that. I don't really remember that. Um, yeah. Okay, look. These are some bad faith arguments about Syncopause and Infernium and stuff. Um, well, okay. I will respond to them. I will take them seriously. Okay, Syncopause is not a Ponto Collectathon because you're always going to die all the time, no matter what you do. Okay, it's going to kill you and send you back to the start. Also, and you're going to lose all of your Pontos, right? Like a Collectathon, part of the appeal is like the number keeps going up like a JRPG and it never goes down. Um, and then also like I think when you're playing Syncopause properly, especially once you've gotten into it, you know, once you're pretty deep into it, you should probably be like stopping pretty frequently and thinking about like each additional Ponto that you could get or each additional gem that you could get or whatever. You should be stopping and thinking about them and grappling with them as an individual problem in the same way that I just described, like a tower with a star on the top of it, right? Like, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff to think about to get one additional Ponto in Syncopause. That's kind of, now that I think about it that way, it's like kind of amazing looking back on my PB, my run and thinking like, man, there was like 5,000 interesting problems that I had to overcome. Okay. Infernium, I think maybe there's a little bit more of an argument, but we're not gonna get too deep into that. Not very on topic. But yeah, it does they're generally put in more interesting spots that make you think a little bit as you're moving through the world. Okay, contextual finishers. What game? Oh, I knew I was thinking of some other game other than just Resident Evil 4 and 5 and maybe 6. I haven't really played enough. I dropped 6 kind of early on. But contextual finishers. Okay. They're also in like Doom. That's the other game I was thinking about, like Doom 2016 and Eternal and stuff. It's I think it's better in Resident Evil. I mean, first of all, because in Resident Evil 5, you know, you can do your contextual finisher, and while the melee animation is playing out, you can like do menuing and reload your weapon in the menu and swap weapons or whatever. That's really not part of it. I can't rate that as part of the trend, but that is awesome. But as part of the trend, I think we can say that like it being an AoE attack that's kind of useful for crowd control, like it is in the Resident Evil games. I think we can consider that as part of the trend. And yeah, I think it makes sense in Resident Evil in a way that it doesn't make sense in Doom. I'm not really sure why. It's something about the way that the pace of Resident Evil 4. I mean, okay, so obviously there's a an interesting risk reward thing that is being presented to you, where if you want to even be ready to come in and do a contextual finisher, you have to be close enough that you're potentially in danger of being threatened by the enemy, right? So that's cool. And the more because it's an AoE attack, it can hit several enemies at once and help with crowd control and stuff. You're taking on even more risk for even more reward in the situations where there are a bunch of enemies that you could potentially hit. Yeah, Doom 2016, for example, just doesn't really have that. It's kind of just a thing that you do. I mean, you arguably you have to take on more risk to move in for the kill, but it also, there's not necessarily other enemies nearby that enemy that you have to go into melee range of, and like that enemy is not going to threaten you. Like, in Resident Evil 4, you might want to like approach an enemy that you're then going to try to like stun and get ready for the contextual finisher. In Doom, I feel like, first of all, because you can kind of move faster, your movement isn't limited in the same way in Doom. It's easier to just react to when it happens. When the enemy's ready for the contextual finisher, then you react and you come in and you do it. I don't know. I think it's very contextual. Contextual finisher is very contextual. Are there more examples that I'm not thinking of contextual finishers? Surely there are. I guess I saw it in what's that beats per minute metal hell singer or something like that. I played a little bit of that game and pretty sure it had that. Ninja Gaiden 2. Okay, yeah, I haven't played it. Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to present an argument based on anything in games that I haven't played or whatever, feel free. But I'm gonna just, I guess B. I don't know. When the boss fight becomes a 5-minute long QTE. Well, we'll get to QTEs later. I don't know if you guys can tell what it is. We got the Heavy Rain. We got that one scene from Heavy Rain, which is so fire. Okay. I don't know. It's like I just have two examples in my head. So like one of them is pretty good and one of them is like whatever. I don't really care. So I guess I'll just leave it be. Contraption building. This one, I'm curious what you guys feel about this one. Not that it's going to change how I rate it. I think I'm putting it D tier. And I just wonder if this is a me problem. It might, or not even a problem, but just my personal taste, and it's not actually a bad thing or whatever. But how do I explain this? I guess first of all, let's define what we're talking about. So obviously we're talking about the Tears of the Kingdom Ultra Hand thing. We're not talking about Zachtronics. We got Zachtronics down here. We're not talking about Zachtronics. We're not talking about building a factory in Factorio. I don't have other examples in mind other than Tears of the Kingdom, but I know that there are examples. Usually in a way that's a bit too comfy. Nuts and bolts. Yeah, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I've seen some gameplay of that a long time ago. I couldn't say that I wouldn't feel comfortable really chiming in on that. Yeah, I was thinking something in Minecraft probably. I don't know. But I almost think that I have a general problem with it, even though I haven't seen very many examples. So I'm not confident in this opinion. I kind of feel like I have an actual problem in theory with it, not just in practice in the examples I've seen. Because there's also these levels there's these levels in puzzle games, and I don't know how I would quickly pull up an example. I'd be scrolling through a ton of levels to find a good example. But like, there's these levels in puzzle games where it's for the most part it's like a reasonably constrained game with like small levels, like almost like Steven's Sausage Roll or whatever. But then suddenly the game throws you into this massive level with like pistons that get pushed, like where you're it's basically it's supposed to be like a big twist on the game's mechanics, where instead of like making this into a normal kind of Sokobanish puzzle, they have made one level in the game where they have used they've repurposed the mechanics to make some kind of level setup where the obvious thing that you have to do is you have to make some complicated machine to push things in the right order as you like step over switches to get to the exit or something. It's like you build this huge setup that's going to play out like this big with this as this big machine with moving pistons or whatever, and then you're going to just walk to the exit and it's going to automatically solve it. It's usually going to be like, it's going to gate you off. Like once you step through a certain gate in the level design, you're not going to be able to step back to change what you made at the beginning with the pistons and everything. And then so all you can do from that point on is walk to the exit, and somehow you have to make it so that while you're walking just through this hallway, the level like solves itself with a big contraption that you've made. Hopefully at least one person has played a puzzle game like what I'm talking about that has a level like this. But it's something I've seen several times, and it always just makes me groan. It's always like, okay, we're doing this now. I don't really want to do this. So yeah, that makes me wonder if I just don't like it in general. Like the way I think my core problem, if I try to really get at my core problem with contraption building in Tears of the Kingdom or wherever, it's that like it's the way to approach it or the way to think about it is just to like be creative and like try crazy stuff, right? And because you don't really have anything to go off of when you start messing around with it, you just have to mess around for a while and see if anything interesting comes of it, or just have like a silly random idea and see what comes of it. And to me, at least, maybe this is just because I'm not a creative person or not creative in the same way that a lot of people are or something. But I don't like being creative in a medium that I am not like familiar with. Like I just feel like if I'm doing creative writing or if I'm doing like game design, even though I haven't done a ton of those things, because I'm like fluent in the language of game design and I'm fluent in the language of English writing, it flows so much more easily for me. It feels good to be creative and I can do so much more interesting things. I have directions that feel like promising to explore. Whereas like in Tears of the Kingdom, I could mess around for an hour building contraptions and like not really get anywhere that's that exciting. Just kind of feel like I just had some random ideas and put some things together, and that's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know. That's my experience. I'm curious if that resonates with anyone, because I kind of feel like I might be the only person who feels this way. Yeah. Again, I am not claiming that any of these are actually trends. Okay, these are the quote unquote trends that I got from my Discord when I asked for more examples, and I just picked the ones that would be interesting to talk about. So I blame the chat. As always, I blame the chat. Does Baba count? Yeah, I think Baba has some. I want to say Baba has some contraption-y puzzles. I don't think Baba in general counts as like contraption building, but certainly sometimes. Yeah, okay. Someone says I like watching people play those games. Yeah, I feel like I feel like this might be one of those things that is more popular is more popular than it deserves to be, maybe because of the modern social media and streamer gaming landscape, right? Yeah. You just see things like that. Like, people love Dwarf Fortress. How many people love to play Dwarf Fortress, raise your hand if you love Dwarf Fortress. Now raise your hand if you want to play Dwarf Fortress. And all the hands go down. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff like that, and contraption building is maybe in that category. And I am always trying to. It's not that I don't want Dwarf Fortress to exist. It's not that I don't want contraption building games to exist necessarily, but I am always more interested and more pushing for games that are interesting to play, games that get you into a particular mindset. And I think when you actually play a game, it shapes your thinking and challenges you in a very different way than when you just uh, watch a streamer mess around making a whatever this is, right? Or watch Northern Lion play horsey game or whatever. Uh, yeah, we got some sickos in this chat. There's always going to be some people in this chat who will raise their hand for things that most people absolutely would not. Wouldn't contraption building just be a sandbox game in general? Certainly a lot of them. Yeah. I do wonder if it can be more interesting in theory, and yeah, I hesitate to put it in F tier. I'll keep it in D tier. I think it feels good. It feels good there. Does Besiege count? I think I've played that. Besiege. Have I played this game? Maybe this isn't the one I was thinking of. Oh no, I think it is. Yeah, I mean it just feels really tedious. It just feels really tedious to build these things. To me. I don't know. I don't know. You much prefer the contraptions to traditional items. I don't know. I do I do want to say that when I played Tears of the Kingdom, so I dropped Tears of the Kingdom kind of early, like maybe 10 hours, 15 hours or something like that. And I think I missed, I mean it's an open world game, so you can do things in any order, so it's not really missing it, but I didn't find something that lets you like save things that you've built so that you can like, you know, reuse some piece that you've built before. I want to say that there's something like that you can find in the game, and I just didn't find it in my time that I played. So I'm sure I would feel more positively about it in Tears of the Kingdom if I had found that. But I'm trying to consider everything I know about these games in general when ranking this. I don't know. I still think I'm not a big fan of contraption building in general. Kingdom Hearts 1 Jelly Ship. I never. Okay, I guess I've just always been this way because I never messed with that at all. I used the basic. I used the basic thing, or maybe I did mess. Maybe you have to mess with it at some point. Can't remember. Kingdom Hearts 1 was weird, man. Is Skill Tree on this list? Well, uh, the original tier list that I made, or that Ziad made and I copied, had AAA wide linear skill tree slop on it. I don't know about I don't know about skill tree in general. I don't know how different that would be. Okay, crafting. Man, this is really putting like the most similar ones right next to each other when it just alphabetized them into like into being like sorted by concept, kind of. Crafting. I mean, crafting it is kind of different. It's definitely different. So I I question whether there's any interesting gameplay inside of crafting itself. Like, there's this game, what's that Neil.fun or whatever? This guy that made the stimulation clicker and the password game and stuff like that. What's that one? Infinite Craft. Okay, so like here's, you know, how's it work? You put them on top of each other. Okay, yeah. So you start with 4 elements. Can you guys even see this? You can maybe see it a little bit. So I just put water and fire together and made steam. All right. Now I can put water and wind together and make a wave. And now I'm going to put steam and a wave together and make surf. Right. And so it's this like it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense. And the idea is that you're going to build up to more and more complicated things. And you can always get back to all the things that you've made right here. And you're going to eventually make insane stuff. This is kind of like an extreme example of what it feels like to try to craft in Minecraft or something like that. If you don't just know the things already, right? If you just know the things already, then you're just doing a chore almost, or you're just doing a task. It's not necessarily interesting gameplay, but if you like Earth plus surf equals beach, I'm not really sure what the logic of that is. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Like if you don't already know the things you can craft and you just have to figure it out through like some kind of quote unquote real world logic, that real world logic is not really a type of thing that works well in games. Like it's not a real puzzle where it actually makes sense. It's just this fuzzy logic of like, I don't know, like, well, that's kind of a different thing. Like when you play a game like this or a crafting game in general, like often surf plus wind equals surfing. Okay. Anyway, when you play these games in general, you often end up in this mode where you're just trying random things that feel like something you haven't tried yet, right? And that's stupid. But if you're really trying to think about it and take it seriously and like make and somehow pull interesting puzzly gameplay out of this or thoughtful gameplay out of this, it doesn't really work because there just isn't a coherent logic that fits words together like this, right? And there's not really even a logic to the way that it works in Minecraft, where you have to arrange items in a 3x3 grid. That just can't capture the complexity of actually building all of the different things that you actually build in Minecraft, right? The banner design system in Minecraft. I don't think so. Banner as in like you're making a flag for your tribe or something. Scott the Waz's father? Are you talking about me? Is this a joke about my appearance, or is this Neil? Is Neil from Neil.fun Scott the Waz's father? Yeah, so that's the other thing I wanted to talk about is something like The Last of Us, where the interesting thing about crafting, or the good thing about crafting, is not inside of crafting itself as a gameplay thing, but rather the crafting is enabling something that helps the game design, right? So like in The Last of Us, you have these very simple decisions. It doesn't feel too complicated to learn or anything like that. The decisions are very simple, like very simple trade-offs. Like if you have a cloth, you can use that cloth for a first aid kit, or you can use it for a Molotov cocktail, right? And those are obviously two completely different things that you might want in two completely different situations. And so that it lets the game drop the components, give you the components rather than giving you the items directly, which kind of auto balances. It gives you a little bit of freedom in how you play, because if you want to use more Molotov cocktails, then you can make more Molotov cocktails. And if you want to play like an idiot and take more damage, I guess, you can do that and then make more first aid kits. And but also, if you're trying to play in a more balanced way, it also just kind of auto balances the game in a way that reduces the need for dynamic difficulty adjustment. So like if it didn't have that, it would maybe there would maybe be more of a need if they didn't have this crafting system where it drops components and then you can make it into whatever you want. There would maybe be a little bit more of a need for the game to kind of just give you more health somehow, like drop first aid kits directly, have some way of dynamically giving you more health directly. Whereas when it drops the components, then you can kind of feel like, okay, I'm forced into using all my cloth for first aid kits whenever I get it. I can never make Molotov cocktails because I'm taking too much damage. And then another player who's doing a better job, they are getting the same number of components, but they can maybe make more Molotov cocktails and not have to make as many first aid kits. So I think it's good for the game design for that reason in a game like The Last of Us. Not saying Minecraft is that great from a design perspective, but I like crafting, creating an incentive to gather resources to complete a goal as a vehicle to give you goals in an open-ended sandbox. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, we've learned in previous streams, we've talked about in previous streams that I'm not a big sandbox guy in general. So I'm kind of struggling to imagine like how crafting is like a linchpin core component of a game that I really, really love. I definitely don't hate it though. I want to go see. Now, only if The Last of Us 2 didn't have dog shit checkpoints. Like too many checkpoints? Because you can replay the game and there's like options for, I mean, you have to do like a self-imposed challenge basically, but you can like make it so that you have to go through each chapter all at once and stuff like that, or even the entire game all at once. I think. I don't know. I think I haven't played it, but because I don't have, I think this is only on the PS5 version, and I only played it on PS4. But I suspect that the roguelite or roguelike mode or whatever is the real way to play that game if you're trying to play it for the gameplay. To me, crafting is like how RPGs give points for experience to simulate real experience. I would rather actually build something than combine resources in a menu. Do you mean actually build something like how it works in Tears of the Kingdom, where you're actually putting the parts together? Or do you mean actually build something like in real life? Yeah. Compared it to contraption building earlier. Okay. Oh, crafting is worse contraption building. Engineer slop. I can see that perspective. But for me, crafting is, in my experience, crafting, like I said, it can work to support a game design that I like. Whereas contraption building, I'm not so sure. Yeah. Craft the bed before sex. Okay. Deck building. Okay. I always feel like I have to tell my personal story when deck building comes up. So when I was like 10 or 8, from like 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 or something like that years old, I played Yu-Gi-Oh extremely seriously for a 10-year-old, extremely seriously. And I feel like I just really burnt myself out on the entire concept of like putting the cards together to try to make synergies happen. So I don't really get into Slay the Spire, and I've played a good number of hours of Slay the Spire. It's, I think it's a well-designed game. I really like how it integrated the deck building with the, pick 3 cards at a time and you're doing it as you go along. I like how it integrated it into the run. And I especially like how when you get deep into Slay the Spire, it gets into some kind of thinking ahead about what can possibly show up in the future type of strategic thinking that you get in, for example, Syncopaws. it's you get some fraction of that syncopause kind of thinking in Slay the Spire, which is awesome. But in general, I'm kind of sour on deck building just because it's just so focused on the synergy stuff. And I feel like that just is a type of thing, at least in my experience, it's a type of thing that you do it once, like I did it with Yu-Gi-Oh when I was a kid. You do it once and then it doesn't really feel worthwhile getting over the hump again, right? Like, and this kind of affects how we might rate it as a trend, right? Like, there are some things that are maybe good the first time, but then you play it. You know, people play Slay the Spire. When you get really into Slay the Spire, you play it for hundreds of hours, and maybe you don't really want to start over learning a whole different like card mechanics complex system, like to really do a good job, to really get good at the deck building part and get all of the depth out of that, or even a significant fraction of like the depth of Slay the Spire. You really have to know the mechanics really, really well. You have to like know all the cards that can possibly show up, right? When you're picking that first card, when you're picking that first card of the three options that it shows you, if you're good at the game, you're not just thinking about those three cards, you were thinking about all of the cards that can possibly show up in the future. And that's cool, but I don't know if it's any cooler to me than the same exact thing that happens in Syncopause. And I feel like that happens with so much less dead weight of like, I have to learn so many facts about this game, right? Like getting all the cards into your head. That's just a big memo load before you get to that really interesting part of the deck building. And I really appreciate Syncopause for like condensing it as much as possible while still having that crazy depth. Anyway, even in the case of something like Syncopause, I don't exactly find myself jumping into every new bro like that comes out, because it would take so much like learning all these new mechanics. It would take so long to get as familiar with those mechanics as I am with Syncopause, right? But anyway, the reason Syncopause or something like that is, you know, is it just has a lot more to it than the deck building thing for multiple reasons. Like in deck building, because there's no positioning really, you're not like on a grid, right? There's not spacing concerns and things that happen differently when you are this far away from an enemy, or when you can fire your wand through one enemy and then it goes through another enemy as well, and it does something different than if you would just hit one enemy, right? Like all of these types of things where like it hits a corner and so it bounces this way. Like that kind of stuff just doesn't exist in a game like Slay the Spire. It's just about that's what I mean. That's part of what I mean when I say it's so focused on the synergies. So it's like a little bit more of a one-dimensional kind of strategy thing. Whereas I feel like Syncopause, it has synergies. It still has synergies, like different spells if they appear together and if you know how to take advantage of them. You can do certain actions to try to take advantage of, get those, to try to figure out what synergies you have. I don't know how to explain Syncopause if you haven't played it, but you can lean into certain synergies in a way that lets you take advantage of them in the same way that you would in Slay the Spire. You can be aware of those things, and it's like the strategic thinking around them is kind of the same, but also more interesting because it's more abstract. It's not like, yeah, it's not as simple. There's just more to it, that because it's all these like different mechanics interlocking in a more interesting way, rather than like, I don't know, Slay the Spire at its worst at least kind of feels like, okay, I just know that this type of mechanic, I'm going for this type of build, and these types of cards are all going to fit into this type of build, and if I see one, I'm gonna pick it. I don't know. I'm not doing a great job of explaining, but I feel like it's just a little bit more of a one-dimensional type of strategy thing. And I appreciate that Slay the Spire goes really deep on that one thing and it integrates it into the game and everything. But I also kind of feel like that on its own is not enough for me to want to get really deep into a game these days. And I kind of was over it when I was 12 years old. Um, however, I guess to defend it as a trend, most people who are playing Slay the Spire, it's an upgrade for them, right? It's I would rather them be playing Slay the Spire than whatever else they would be playing otherwise. Like this is like Slay the Spire went ultra mainstream, and something like Syncopause is never going to go ultra mainstream. And so it's maybe a positive trend in that it's getting people thinking about game mechanics more directly, and maybe the fact that it's one dimensional in the way that I'm talking about makes it more palatable, more, people can grapple with it. People can learn that skill, and you know maybe I had to learn that skill when I was 10 years old, and now it just seems simple to me because I'm 20 years on from that. So I almost want to put it A tier because I feel like it's a good trend, even if it's not so much my jam. I think it's maybe a good stepping stone toward a more mainstream audience being able to appreciate more complicated games. Does that check out in you guys' heads? I feel like I've kind of talked about this in the past. The end of gameplay has the salient point about how many games are nature but worse, and bad crafting contraptioning trends toward this. I totally feel that. Totally feel that. How's it going, Notester? Notester, yeah. The fact that it can be read as no tester or notester really just threw me for a loop. No tester. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Maybe it's supposed to be both. Maybe it's supposed to throw me for a loop. Okay, notester. Is there a character in Slay the Spire that spawns minions? Yes. Not minions like in the movies. Not the Despicable Me minions, but minions in general. Okay, this is looking really nice, and we got a nice spread here so far. Okay, explosive barrels. This is another one that I'm not really sure how much I can say about. How much is there to say about explosive barrels? They're just in so many games. They're in so many games. I think explosive barrels can be interesting when it's not immediately obvious when you're supposed to use them or when you have to actively avoid having them explode. I'm trying to think of when that even when I've even experienced that. I mean, it's not always completely obvious when you're supposed to use them. But, you can usually make a reasonable guess at when you're supposed to use them, and it'll work out fine. I'm trying to think of an example where you have to actively avoid having them explode. I guess there's like AoE. Yeah, it would be like, yeah, I can guess. I can assume that it would be interesting in Doom maps that I have not played. Has any game had its enemies use the barrels against the player? Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of feel like yes, but I can't think of what that would be. But it's it's it works. It does what it does. It makes it so that you have to think about the space, and there's certain positions where if you can figure out how to use that as a choke point or wait for the right timing, you can shoot the barrel and save some ammo, kill a bunch of enemies really quickly, whatever. Sometimes it creates interesting kind of puzzles with the enemy movement. If the enemies have kind of interesting movement patterns, or if it's kind of a challenge to get them to move in the way that you want them to, then explosive barrels can maybe create some interesting thinking and challenge around getting the enemies into the right place. But it's so I don't know if you guys could hear that. Anyway, it's just been done so much. It's just such a staple of shooters at this point that I just can't remember the last time I can't remember the last time I shot an explosive barrel and I felt anything other than like the faintest echo of a dopamine hit that I got the first time I shot an explosive barrel when I was 7 years old, right? Noise canceling is so good. Nice. No, do not spoil away, please. Do not spoil away. But, you know, it does what it does. Yeah. I think there's more that could be done with it, but yeah, in the way that it exists as a trend, it's just like, whatever, I think. Is there anything more to say about that? I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of explosive barrels like more broadly, like is there some really abstract game that has just an explosive thing that's sitting there, you know, some kind of, I don't know. I don't think I have to really think about it anymore. It is what it is. Explosive barrels should be replaced with shmup bombs. Yo, put that in the Discord. I'll do that for the sequel, the third game design trends tier list, because shmup bombs I have a lot to say about. Actually, I might get into that with lives. When I talk about lives later, I might get into shmup bombs because that's kind of relevant. If there's something that you could blabber for an hour about, that's interesting. It's kind of surprising. That almost makes me want to bump it up. If there's that much to say about it, I just feel like there's not much to say about it, honestly. There is, yeah, I don't know. Barrel cannons like Dark Cloud 2. Some barrels give you items and some barrels exploding. Are the gems and spider eggs in Hyperdemon exploding barrels? No. Those explode by themselves, or they do something by themselves. Yeah, no, it's different, man. That doesn't fit the trend of explosive barrels. And does deck building have a single example of a positive influence on the industry outside Slay the Spire? Okay, that is a great question, because I was saying like it is a thing that you maybe only want to do once. So maybe I should rethink this, actually, because I was saying it's positive. I was saying it has a positive impact because it's maybe getting people to engage with like more pure gameplay stuff, even if it's a little too one-dimensional for me. But am I just talking about Slay the Spire there? Because we're rating this as a trend. We're rating deck building as a trend. So is it positive as a trend, or is just Slay the Spire positive? I kind of think that's a good point. They don't just explode by themselves? Wait. I thought that they spawned spiders. It's been so long since I played Hyperdemon. Anyway. I guess I could be just mixing it up with... Yeah, but if you don't... Okay, a gem, yeah. A gem, yeah. But I'm saying that they're different from explosive barrels because they also do other things, right? Also, they're not just like placed in the environment like a barrel. Picture a JPEG of a barrel over it when it happens. No, I understand that. I understand that they explode. I understand that you shoot them and they explode. But it's not an explosive barrel, okay? I'm just not considering that. I'm just not going to consider that as part of the trend. But also, if we're getting into that, since you're trying to start an argument here, the spider eggs in Hyperdemon piss me off. Okay, they piss me off because there's so much cool stuff you can do with them. The ways that you can like get a movement boost and like a jump off of them and all this stuff, and like there's no reason to do that. There's no reason to do that. They designed a game with all this cool tech that you don't actually do, because especially like the majority of the time in Hyperdemon, once you get good at it, you're just kind of staying ahead of the spawns and you're doing the same little loop. You're doing the same simple loop with with slight variations over and over again. And then you get to the point in the game where it's not like that, where you're actually kind of adapting to what's happening and there's more stuff going on. But you just develop a strategy where you are always going to shoot the gem at the same time in the same way, pretty much, right? And you're generally only going to use the spider eggs in one or two particular ways. When the game came out, if you looked at the top of the leaderboard, one of the top runs, maybe fourth place at the time that I was playing last, was the developer, Matt Bush. At least I think it was him. Maybe one of the other people who worked in the game or something. No, I think it was Matt Bush. And he was like styling on him, right? Like his run would have gotten an S if this were DMC. But then slowly over time, as people optimized the game, they optimized the fun out of it, right? They optimized all of that cool stuff away, where you're like sliding into a spider egg to get a boost instead of using it to blow up some enemies or whatever. He was just doing this crazy variety of stuff, but the game wasn't well designed enough for that to actually be balanced, to actually be relevant at top level play. And that's just really a shame. Yeah, because like all the top runs now are a little bit more straightforward. Yeah, in terms of and samey in terms of the strategy. I'm not a big player expression guy, by the way. I don't know if it came across that way, but like I just want there to be a reason to use all the cool stuff that's in the game, you know? I think a lot of people here have played Hyperdemon, probably. I don't know. Hyperdemon seems pretty popular around these parts. Okay. You should have a dynamic difficulty. I should have dynamic difficulty on the list. Yeah, I didn't include that. I think someone might have suggested that in the Discord, but I didn't get to it. I just did the next 20, right? The first tier list was 20 things, and so I just did 20 more things. But yeah, we can always do a part 3 or a third tier list. Yeah. Okay. Fast travel. Fast travel is hard to talk about because the examples that I like the most are spoilery. Like, I can't even mention the name of the game. Please do not mention the names of the games. If you know what I'm talking about, please do not mention the names of the games in the chat. But there are 2 different games that I'm thinking of that I like, where fast travel is not just a thing that the game recognizes that it would be annoying to manually travel everywhere all the time, but it also recognizes that it creates this bad disconnect from the world. You start to feel like you're not really in a world if you can just fast travel everywhere all the time, even just the places that you've already been. You start to feel like you are in a level-based game where you are doing the new level, right? You have to go through a level only when it's new, and everywhere else you can just fast travel to. That makes it feel like everything is just an individual level from that point on, after you unlock fast travel. And the games that I like, they have some kind of middle ground somehow. They have 2 different ways of doing it, but it introduces fast travel relatively late, and also it's somehow limited, or there's friction to it in some way. There's something stopping you from doing it all the time. And yeah, it's enough to kind of keep you in the world. And I always felt like, even before I saw either of those examples, I always felt like that was something that needed to happen. That's something that I wanted, you know? Like Dark Souls 1 is kind of in this direction. Like it doesn't limit you in the same way, but it does hold off on unlocking fast travel until pretty late in the game. And I do like that about it, relative to just having fast travel from the beginning, like Dark Souls 2 or whatever. So I guess I struggle to rate this as a trend, because there's a couple examples where it's absolutely a positive thing for the game, but I feel like the trend, I don't know, maybe there's just examples that I haven't Maybe there's just examples that I haven't played that are more mainstream that I would like. Have I played Morrowind? I have like 20 years ago. Not Morrowind I know has a lot of good in-universe travel stuff. Well, it also has, I guess, time is passing when you're fast traveling. It has fast travel, right? But time is passing, and maybe there's reasons why you wouldn't want to. I can't remember. But yeah, it feels like an essential. It feels like it's inevitable that fast travel exists, right? Because some of these worlds are just too big. I mean, I don't know. You could imagine making an exploration game that doesn't have fast travel in the same that doesn't have fast travel at all. It doesn't have fast travel in the way that we're talking about, where you can just warp to a bunch of different places. Rather, it has like specific spots in the world where, you know, someone has set up a portal back to town or a portal back to this one specific other spot. You know, there's specific like Pac-Man loop around style things. And you can always do like it's so hard not to spoil things. You know, there's a lot of games that do that Pac-Man kind of thing where I don't want to spoil what they are, but games where you realize eventually, once you've gotten to the limits of the world, the outer edges of the world, you realize that there's actually no outer edge to the world. The world just loops back around to the other side. And that kind of cuts down on the need for fast travel or any kind of teleporting or whatever. And I really like that. I just think, yeah, there are things that you can do to cut down on the need for fast travel, and those things are cool. But I do think that sometimes it is just a positive thing to have fast travel. Another example that I just thought of is World of Warcraft. I think they were really thoughtful about how getting around that world works. And I think it's no coincidence that people like me who have a lot of negative feelings about World of Warcraft have very strong positive feelings about the world and the feeling of being in that world. And I don't know how they changed this later on necessarily, but early World of Warcraft, you had to walk around a lot. And first of all, the world was really compelling, you know, especially for the time. But it was really they had the vibes on lock, and they really thought about where they were placing things in the world, and they obviously had a rich like lore from many previous games in the franchise to draw from, and that helped. But you know, it felt worth being in that world. And then you had to run around a lot, but then there were multiple options for how to get around more quickly. There was like flying on a griffin or whatever, which first of all you have to pay for. That's a little bit of friction. But then also you have to actually wait. You know, you have to actually sit there while you fly around, and you know, maybe you can go and get a snack or do some push-ups or or something. You can listen to a podcast watch a video on your second monitor if we were talking about like the year 2026, how people play games now. But you know, that's more friction, but it's also cool. You get to see the world from a different perspective that you wouldn't be able to see it from if you were just running. You know, there's ships. You wait for a boat, and then you take a boat to a different continent, to a different place. Like, there's a bunch of different ways to get around that you would want to do and that you would want to use in different situations. And then there is literal fast travel, but like, you have an item that's on a long cooldown that you can teleport back to your hometown or home city, and you have to choose where your home city is. So there's only one place that you can do that to, and you can only do it like once an hour or something. And then like there's one class like character type in the game that has the ability to summon people who are in their group from anywhere in the world or whatever. But there's like crazy limitations on that as well. Like, you have to have a certain number of people from your group there to summon the rest of the group. Like, yeah, they like really thought about this a lot in the design of that game. And yeah, I just wish other exploration-y games felt more like that. But yeah, more recently, there are a couple good examples that I don't want to spoil. So, UFO 50's onion delivery. No, not what I was thinking of, but my problem with fast travel is that it's a band-aid you can lean on when designing a world map. I feel that way a little bit. But sometimes it's the game is better for having a little bit of it, and that's what I'm trying to say. Because it's also just like it's such a powerful thing to let you travel all the way across the world all at once that it does feel important and magical if there's like a heavy constraint around it in the way that I'm talking about. Anyway, I think you guys get what I'm saying. Let me scroll through the chat. Oh, in Morrowind, you can only fast travel between specific points, and even each specific point can only lead to other specific points. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think I want... Yeah. Anyway, I won't talk about that because I don't really remember that game. I didn't play too much of it, and it was like 20 years ago. Yoku's Island Express has the opposite, where you can go from specific locations to anywhere, but not the other way around. To anywhere, but not the other way around. It's the example I point to with respect to bad fast travel. I'm not sure I totally understand, but it seems too powerful. Zeppelins and flight paths in WoW just rock. Yeah. Zeppelins is the equivalent of the ships for Horde. Oh, totally agree. Was I doing push-ups? No, I was not. As you can tell. Isn't fast travel a symptom of a game that is not dense enough? I don't know. Like, you might want to make a game that's massive. You might want to make a game that's a massive world. Then again, you might want to make that massive world work in a way that's not just 2D. And, the wrapping around is one way to kind of do that. But also, you can have like a Link to the Past, light world, dark world type of thing where, in the 2D space of the map, you can't fast travel, but you can also travel, quote unquote, back and forth between the different layers of that same map. You can have something like that. You can have several layers of map there and have like what amounts to a massive world that actually doesn't take that long to get from any particular point to any particular other point. So there are ways to do it, but I do think at the end of the day, fast travel is useful sometimes, and I don't know. I kind of just want to put it C tier. I feel like as a trend, it's maybe even D tier actually. Because it does feel like a cop out most of the time. If I'm thinking about it as a trend overall, it usually feels like a way to get around designing something that could have been more interesting and better. Yeah. Yeah, Link to the Past does have fast travel. I wasn't saying that it didn't. I was just saying that you can make an exploration game that has layers of world like that, which is a way to make more world that you can get where you can move around manually more quickly. Instead of having a world that's 50 by 50 rooms, where if you want to travel from one corner of that world to the opposite corner, it's going to take hours. You can condense that 50 by 50 into the same number of rooms, but it's like 5 stacks of, it's the light world and then the dark world and then the twilight world, and then it's 5 layers of world that are quote unquote stacked on top of each other, where you can almost move in 3D in a certain way, and that lets you condense the world. It lets you have the same amount of world, but it's all closer to each other. If you want to travel from the furthest point of the world, if you want to travel from one corner of the world to the furthest corner, it's then going to not take nearly as much time without fast travel. Hopefully that makes sense. Thing about old school RuneScape is that it's thinking about the game is the game taken to its logical extreme. So the developers have made basic navigation around hyper interesting. Basic navigation around hyper interesting. Can't really comment on that, I guess, because I just haven't played enough RuneScape. Okay. Foddian. Foddian. We got Bennett here. This is a weird one because like Bennett Foddy, God bless him. He just his his taste just has no connection. It bears no resemblance to anyone else's taste or to like especially like mainstream taste in video games, right? So he's just kind of doing his own thing. He's doing so much stuff that's weird in his games. And then Foddian becomes a trend and it's like, well, what part of that are you talking about? like no. And I think some games kind of capture it, but like you have stuff like Unaccessible, which I really liked. It was near the top of my Unaccessible game. It was near the top of my game of the year list last year. I think the movement system in this game is awesome. And it has, in some sense, it has more that is truly Foddian in my mind than a lot of the games that most people would say are Foddian. Because it has this weird movement system with a bunch of little quirks and it's kind of physicsy and all that stuff. And then it has this kind of frustrating, like you're climbing the stairs very slowly and awkwardly like this. And that just feels like a kind of Bennett Foddy flavor of gameplay. But it's a lot of people probably would say this is not Foddian because it doesn't have the falling all the way down thing. It's like a checkpoint based game. I mean, it's kind of you can kind of do things in different orders, but it also has checkpoints. You don't fall all the way down in the same way. Oh yeah. I did see that when I was in the middle of talking. Sorry, Tanner, if you're still here, thanks for the resub, man. Anyway, so yeah, this is kind of Foddian in one way, and then something like Only Up, is Foddian in a completely different way, where it just has the falling all the way down, or Baton Brutal, or Jump King is Foddian in a very different way, and all those games just feel super different, man. Like this game feels super different from Baby Steps, feels super different from Jump King, feels super different from Only Up. I assume I haven't played it because it didn't look like my jam. Foddian and Rage Game are distinct, for sure, but I do think falling all the way down is a key part of Foddian. So, like in Jump King, the falling all the way down has a very different flavor, I think, because they make it like strategic. Let me just show some Jump King. Like, I don't know if you'll be able to tell from the trailer if you haven't played the game, but a really core part of Jump King and what makes it great is the thinking about risk being built in so directly into the jump. So the way that the jump works is you hold down the jump button, you press direction, and then you just hold the jump button down for a certain amount of time, and then you let go, and then you have done everything for the jump. Now you just have to sit there and pray, right? You let the jump play out, and hopefully you land on solid ground. There's no air control, there's no anything like that. All the inputs for the jump happen before all of the jump happens. And so yeah, because of that, and because of how they lean into this in the level design, it it makes it very strategic where you have to think about like, you know, I'm going to intentionally slightly lean toward overshooting here because if I overshoot this on this jump, I'm going to fall down like to the previous platform. But if I undershoot on this jump, I'm going to fall like a mile, right? Um, that's a really core thing that you're thinking, type of thing that you're thinking all the time in this game. And it makes you really look at every little piece of the level design and think ahead about what's going to happen when different, you know, if you fail in various ways. It's making you think, it's making you expect, it's making you try to expect what's going to happen and try to predict what's going to happen in various scenarios and think about the pitfalls before you fall into them, and rewarding you for doing that, and rewarding you for managing risk in a really simple but really still kind of surprisingly deep way. Yeah, highly recommend this game. But anyway, it doesn't really feel that Foddian. Like in getting over it, you're not really like, I don't know. I didn't really find myself doing it, thinking in that kind of way, because often the jumps and getting over it, often the moves and getting over it are just, I don't know, because it's so physicsy, you can't really think as clearly about how to like slightly modulate your move to manage risk, right? It's the movement system is so messy in that classic Bennett Foddy way. You can't think clearly about it in quite the same way. Now, what I do really like about Bennett Foddy games, especially Baby Steps, is it just explores a gameplay system in a different way, in a way that you really don't get in the vast majority of games. Like, honestly, I'm trying to think of a single other game that feels like Baby Steps in terms of how you learn that movement system. There's a crazy amount of depth to it, but it also feels learnable. But the way that you learn it has this flavor of learning to walk, right? Where it's like, it's very frustrating at first, and you know, he intentionally makes it very funny, which helps a lot and makes it kind of balances out the frustration in a nice way. But yeah, I don't know. I've talked about this before, so I won't get too deep into it. But the way that the Baby Steps movement system is very physics based, and yet it feels learnable. There's like discrete lessons that you can learn from trying to climb a specific obstacle and whatever. And you can eventually get quite good at it and be thinking about all these subtle little things about, oh, my torso, my hip is going to bang into this if I don't put my foot like a tiny inch, millimeter back from the, from where I would ideally want to put it. And, all these little things, like, all that is really, really cool. And it's a big part of why I love Baby Steps. There's a lot of things I love about Baby Steps, but yeah, my problem, I feel like there's one more thing I wanted to say. Yeah, the falling down, the way that you think about the risk of falling back down and the way that, and what happens after you fall back down is very different in Baby Steps. Like, in Baby Steps, they're often intentionally making it so that when you fall down trying one particular route, you will naturally then try a different route. It's going to drop you in a spot where the most natural thing to do is to actually try a completely different route. I think that's really cool. I love that. And they're playing with this. Like, sometimes they're doing the opposite. Sometimes they're very consciously thinking about your psychology and what you're going to want to do to try next if you fail in a particular way and things like that. They're thinking about all kinds of stuff related to that and working with it, playing with it in all different ways. But that just feels very different from the Jump King thing to me, or even from the getting over it thing. And so hopefully that captures why Foddian in my mind is such a big mess that's really hard to that's really, really hard to to rank. Now, but let's try to think about it as a trend, okay? Let's try to think about it as a trend. As a trend, I think it's bad. I think it's kind of like the... Oh, wait, I forgot to ever move this. I was going to maybe move this because it's really just Slay the Spire that I think is good. See? Because I'm kind of thinking the same thing about... A similar thing about Foddian. So what I was saying about deck building is... It's cool. I'm glad that Slay the Spire exists, even though it's not really my thing. I think it's good for a lot of people. It's getting them to play a more gamey game than they would normally play, and they're thinking about game mechanics and getting better at games from playing Slay the Spire, I think. So I think it's a positive influence. But then deck building as a trend in general, I'm not so sure, because like there's all these clones of Slay the Spire, but are those all a positive influence? Like, people can just play Slay the Spire for this. It's not a type of thing that you really need to experience in multiple different games. Once you've played one game that goes really deep on deck building, I feel like you've kind of played them all. It doesn't need to be a trend. So I don't know. I feel like C tier feels appropriate. And I'm kind of wondering if the same is true for Foddian. I don't know. My instinct says I should put Foddian a little higher. But the reason I'm thinking this is, I think the true Foddian thing that Baby Steps really nails is something that is so hard to get right. It's like you're taking on... It's like the 10 out of 10 difficulty way to design your game is like to have it centrally physics-based and yet also really, really learnable and deep. And it's all pre-baked level design, and you can fall all the way down, and yet it doesn't get like too frustrating in the wrong ways, and it does a good job of teaching you how you should approach climbing this big mountain. Like, I think they took on a real serious challenge with Baby Steps that they did a really admirable job with. And when I think about Foddian as a trend, I don't really see other, like is Only Up really thinking that carefully about those kinds of things? I don't think so at all. I mean, it's not even doing the physics-based thing at all. But I mean, I think even if you look back at Bennett Foddy's career, I kind of feel like Baby Steps is where it was finally fully realized, like everything that he's been trying to do throughout his entire career. And his career has been like over a decade, like well over a decade, you know? So I just think it's such a hard thing to try to do that I don't know if it's a good trend, because it just results in a bunch of not so good designers, not so skilled designers trying to do something that took Bennett Foddy 15 years to figure out how to do really well. But I think I actually want to put it in A tier because each of the like I said, Bennett Foddy has such weird taste that when his taste becomes a trend, there's so many different things that brings into the mainstream that wouldn't be there otherwise, that just weren't there before, right? Like this particular flavor of like learning a system that's really finicky and like, you know, like getting over it. Like you're just moving your mouse around, and somehow moving your mouse in just the right way can result in so many different types of moves, right? It's not easy to learn like typical gameplay movement systems where every move is on its own button. Like that is something we didn't really have in the mainstream before, and now we maybe have people trying to do that kind of thing, even if it's really hard to do just that. And then this falling all the way down type of thing, that's something that fits really well in some kinds of games. Like I said, Jump King does really well with that. Even if sometimes I think a lot of games are adopting that particular aspect of the Foddian thing without thinking about it so much and without really knowing how to make it good. But still, I think it's just good that these things are kind of recognized as an option now by game designers. Like, yeah, it's just so weird that like some of the stuff that Bennett Foddy likes is just so weird that like No one really considered doing it before. I think he has overall been a very positive influence. I'm just, yeah, the only thing stopping me from putting in an S tier is that I really don't think other designers do a good job with these things a lot of the time. Okay, how's it going, Perp? Thanks, Musashi. Appreciate that. I think of myself as a bona fide game critic. I don't think you have to do like reviews to be a bona fide game critic. And I think of my Game of the Year list on Substack that you can go and find and read. I think of that as definitely game criticism, even more like a regular game review. If you are looking for that in particular. But if what you're thinking is like you want me to talk about all the mainstream games and why they're slop, that just doesn't really interest me. I like talking about things that I like for the most part. Yeah, it's kind of like being inspired by Dark Souls is good in theory, but in practice, nobody is replicating the best parts like the world design and just hyper focuses on the boss fights. Totally, but I think it's better than that. I think Foddian has a more positive influence than that. Yeah. Yeah, because everyone who wanted to just to make an interesting exploration game, they've been doing that, right? The Infernium guy, Carlos Coronado, he was probably going to do that with or without Dark Souls. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's not true, but I think interesting exploration games existed before Dark Souls 1 and still exist in a similar way afterward. Whereas Souls-like is the thing that really spawned from those games, unfortunately. I don't know. That's probably being overly negative about it, but whatever. Are we halfway through? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I think I'm gonna do one more, and then continue next week. I really thought I was gonna get through this one a lot more quickly and do it all in one week. But thinking ahead, like I know I'm going to talk for a long time about lives. I know I'm going to talk for a long time about precision platforming. God knows I'm going to yap for an hour about procedural generation. So, yeah, I think I'm going to split it in two again. So let's do hero shooters, and then we can just maybe hang out a little more if you guys want to. Hero shooters. I wasn't sure if I should include this one actually because I haven't played Overwatch. Seems fine. Seems fine, but I've played like TF2. I mean, Apex Legends is kind of, it's obviously a battle royale first and foremost, but you have abilities in the same in what feels like a similar way to Overwatch. You have different classes with different abilities. Am I streaming next week? Don't know yet. We'll find out. Maybe I'll stream at a different time or something. I don't know. But yeah, I do. I think having classes with abilities in a team-based shooter can work well. I guess I've played Valorant. Is Valorant a hero shooter? Feels like a Counter-Strike game, but it feels like a Counter-Strike game with Overwatch abilities in it. Deadlock, I'm not really considering. I don't know. Maybe it is. I have played Deadlock a little bit. I guess this is kind of getting to my issue when we start talking about Deadlock. It's kind of maybe getting to my issue with hero shooters in general. How can I put this? When I play Deadlock, let me just say that this is subject to change. I do want to play more Deadlock. I haven't played it since it like first launched. I played maybe like 15, 20 hours of Deadlock when it first blew up, right? When people first started getting access to it, like years ago. And I know they've changed it a lot since then. It seems like they've added a lot of interesting heroes and stuff. So I want to give it some more time. I want to give it a lot more time actually, because it's an interesting game. But my impression, my feelings from when I did play Deadlock is that I would the MOBA aspects are better in a MOBA, and the shooter aspects are better in a first-person shooter. And I can understand why you might want those things combined, but to me, too much is lost from both sides, especially the MOBA aspects, for me to really want to play it. And it's also tricky because, like, you know, I played 1,500 hours, something like that, of Dota 2 in like 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, that somewhere in there. And I think the game was really good back then, actually. If we could still play that game, I would recommend it. I would recommend it a lot. I would recommend it often. At this, yeah, it's definitely a game that you have to put a lot of time into. There's a lot you have to be willing to full autism it for a while, which is maybe not ideal, but it actually rewards that. There's so much interesting depth and just weird stuff, weird ways that the systems interact in that game that they just left in, right? It has that flavor of like this was originally a mod and things are happening like the mechanics are working in a kind of unintended way, but it's actually interesting and it leads to a lot of emergent depth, and that just kind of got left in the game and built on. And I think the having different classes with abilities on cooldowns and all of that kind of thing works really well in that structure of a MOBA where, one, it's more slow paced. You move around kind of slowly in a MOBA compared to a shooter. And that kind of leaves you more space to think and predict what your opponents are doing and coordinate with your team and things like that, which is, to me, a big part of the core of what makes MOBAs interesting. And then, two, you have this top-down perspective where you can look anywhere on the map at any time, right? You can click on the minimap and immediately have your perspective be there and see what is happening in a different lane, and click on an enemy hero and see what items they've built and see how much, see the status of a bunch of different things happening all around the map. You're trying to have this overall awareness of the game that lets you strategize in a MOBA-like way. Plan around your long cooldowns, things like that. And yeah, that you don't have that in something like Deadlock either. It feels much more like you're stuck in your little bubble. You can't get the big picture and strategize around the big picture as much, and so it feels a little more like cramped in a certain way strategically. And so that and also, yeah, it also just loses. I mean, part of what's good about MOBAs is that it takes from StarCraft and stuff. It takes from classic RTS the attention splitting aspect, right? Where I'm trying to do these last hits in my lane as well as I can, and I'm also trying to zone in my lane and like have this little play this footsies game with my laning opponent, and I'm also trying to stack the camps when it's time to do that, and I'm also trying to keep an eye on all the other lanes, and I'm also trying to teleport to other lanes to save my teammate when I can. And it's all these things you have to split your attention between, and you just can't do that as well in something like Deadlock, or at least it doesn't feel as good for various reasons. Now, how was I thinking that connected to hero shooters? Yeah, I guess I just think that hero shooters, it feels more like a dopamine thing, or it feels like the abilities are there to make crazy stuff happen on the screen rather than to be something that you really strategize around, like, I don't know, maybe when people get really good at Valorant, like, they're thinking about the abilities in an interesting way, but I kind of like the minimalism of Counter-Strike. Like, it makes you think about the lines, think about at least certain kinds of Counter-Strike map design. Like, you are moving around this space very carefully. Every possible line that that enemy could be potentially camping on or potentially moving down, and you know where you can, how you can split up your team to apply pressure in particular ways and make and try to force particular movements on the map. And it's this granular like strategizing around the map in a very like focused way that I feel like Valorant kind of loses some of that by bringing in hero shooter elements. And yeah, all this, I'm not sure how relevant all of this is to rating hero shooters though, because like Overwatch feels like a pretty different thing. And I haven't played enough of it to really say like whether it creates its own kind of appeal by having this just fast-paced, crazy stuff flying around all over the place abilities thing. I think most hero shooters are just complete clusters. Objectives are always capture point and payload, and it just feels like people throw their bodies on the point with little thought. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of my impression. I'm thinking about TF2 as well. In TF2, it's kind of just a clusterfuck, right? Like the overall match, you're not thinking about the overall match. You're just one small part of this thing that's happening, and you just keep respawning and trying to do something. I don't know. I guess it's different if you play TF2 competitively. But are people playing TF2 competitively? You're mostly just doing something by yourself, or like trying to join a group of people that just happen to be moving in a certain direction at the same time that you are, and you're doing your own thing in this big mess of stuff that's happening. And that's what Overwatch seems like to me. That is my impression of Overwatch. But I am thinking about Apex Legends, and somehow in Apex the abilities work for me. It's like it rewards you for noticing when an enemy team is approaching you and seeing, okay, they have these 3 heroes. And so, or legends, whatever, you know. I hate that every game has a different thing. Hero, legend, champion, whatever. You know, in Apex, you see what character they're playing, and you lock that into your head ahead of time as you're going into a fight, if possible. And if you hear people coming and you don't know who they're what characters they're playing, then you have to think about the fight in a very different way, a much more broad way, where you have to kind of be ready for anything to happen. And that to me leans into what is interesting about battle royales, which is when you play them right, when you play them more like Counter-Strike, you're like, they incentivize you to think about your positioning really carefully, move really strategically through an area, you know, find a nice spot to chill for a little bit with the high ground and try to take fights on good terms, you know, run away when you have to. Like, that's another thing. Like a lot of the heroes in this is maybe part of what makes it work as a battle royale. Part of what makes Apex work better than other battle royales. So many of the characters have abilities that are completely about, or at least very useful for getting out of fights. If you're in an ongoing firefight in a small area with another team, and you hear a third team coming to mess up your whole day, and you no longer feel like it's safe to be there. There are a lot of different ways. Like a lot of the characters in Apex have like a grapple hook that you can use to like quickly swing around in a way and get away, or even like Wraith has like a portal that you can make a way out for your entire team, basically, to get away and run away. And that's a big part of what I like about Apex, is that it's bullshit, right? That's what I like about battle royales in theory, and Apex especially, is that it's bullshit, but you can manage that bullshit in the same way that I will get to when I talk about procedural generation. I'm not putting it in F. You know, and it's obviously, you know, Syncopause is my favorite game of all time. That's like the most bullshit game ever. So yeah, I like it about Apex that you can be in a fair fight with another team, and then a third team can show up and you just have to make the decision to run away. That's an interesting decision to make, and that's an exciting moment to have happen to you when you're in a game, right? A third party comes and you have to figure out how to deal with that. Like, and also like thinking ahead when you're in a fight about not planning the fights that you take so that you don't take a fight that you're not going to be able to get away from, or that you're unlikely to be able to get away from. Don't take a fight in a bad spot where you're probably going to get third partied by someone who can just, pick you all out from the high ground on a cliff nearby because you're all exposed or whatever. I think the hero-ness of Apex actually because they knew what they were doing in the game design. It balances out the battle royale-ness, which is very interesting. So yeah. C tier? I don't know, man. How do I rate hero shooters as a trend? I really don't know. I think the real problem is modern hero shooters wanting to be competitive. Overwatch is only a 5v5 or whatever. This is something that I've thought about a lot because I like Apex Legends a lot. Or I should clarify this as well. Similar to Dota 2, I don't necessarily like Apex Legends in 2026. I felt like the game was going downhill by like 2021 or 2022 or something, and I haven't played the game since then. So I once liked Apex Legends a lot. So, but yeah, I've thought about this distinction between like a competitive game and like a semi-competitive game and something like that. Because to me, when you watch pro Apex Legends matches, it's really stupid. They're like sitting there, they're playing too careful. They're camping all the time. They're like just trying to lock down a building that's in the zone and just sitting there for the majority of the match. They spend so much time just sitting there. And then like at the very end, when the zone is like absolutely tiny, everyone has to come out of their buildings and blow each other up, and it's just stupid. But that's first of all, you could think of that as a problem. There's probably a way to make the tournament structure different, like reward you more for kills and stuff like that. There might be a way to make the actual goals. What am I trying to say here? The tournament format, right? To make the tournament format different, where it would reward a different kind of play. But certainly when you take it out of the esports context and just like, I'm playing for ranked with my friends, I'm trying to climb the ranked ladder as quickly as I can. The game does a pretty good job of incentivizing you to play like relatively aggressively. If you play super safe, I mean, first of all, these games do have things built into the design where you are rewarded for playing aggressively because it levels up your shields and stuff like that when you do damage to people. So you have to seek out fights a little bit if you want to win. But you're especially rewarded in Apex ranked for playing aggressively because kills are like a multiplier somehow. I don't remember exactly how it works, but like you get a lot more elo, whatever the equivalent of elo is. You get a lot more rank when you finish a round. Even if you didn't win, it's like a decent placement gives you some score and then gives you some rank, and then your kills are kind of like a multiplier on that or something like that. Your team's kills. So that creates a very different, and also just the fact that you're playing, the fact that not everyone is trying, money is not on the line. You're playing just in ranked mode instead of playing it as an esport. There's a lot of people in the game who aren't taking it super seriously, or just kind of messing around or whatever. And so it creates a good experience for someone who plays the game like I do, taking it semi-seriously and trying to win and trying to think about it critically and trying to strategize. Because not everyone is taking it that seriously. I don't know. It's this weird thing. But anyway, that's totally tangential to this. Hero shooters, I don't know, man. I think I'm gonna put a D tier actually. Nah. I guess the question is, are we considering something like Apex a hero shooter or not? Because I feel like I can't put it in D tier if I think that the hero abilities really help make Apex a better game. I think I am counting Apex. I think I'm counting Deadlock. I think I'm counting everything. And it's kind of, that makes it kind of tricky though. I don't know. I don't know. This feels kind of this feels okay for now. I'll maybe rethink next stream before I, or maybe at the end after I drop everything in, before I go to Twitter to get roasted again. I'll rethink everything. I'll have a last look through everything. But this feels okay. I know we'll have at least one S tier, so I'm not worried about this empty S tier. I know we'll have at least one S tier. All right. I think that's going to be it. I think that's going to be it for this stream. Any more thoughts, feelings, questions? Anyone playing any good games that they want to talk about? Oh yeah, join the Discord. I should really post the Discord before before I signal that the stream is basically over. Melee 868 back. Yeah, dude. Yeah, we have some good chatting in the Discord all the time. If I could add a design for S tier, like add a design trend, like just add one of these things, make up my own game design. Yeah, Adam, I don't know about Melee this year. I'm gonna try to at least give it some time. You know, I'm probably not going to go crazy deep on it the way that I hoped to, but yeah, I'll try to make time to play some. 868 back. I also like promised to play this year. Here, let me pull up the thing. Where is it? It's showing. Here we go. So this was my challenge. My people do backlog bingo. I thought this would be a better challenge for 2026. I am not doing very well on this challenge. I'm not doing very well on this challenge. I played Knight's Try. I played Spin Rhythm. Well, when I say played, I'm just saying like played enough to like give it a fair shake. If I don't like it, like I didn't totally love Spin Rhythm, so I kind of dropped it. Same with Parking Garage, Rally Circuit. Played a lot of Returnal. So these first four, you would maybe think I'm doing great, but I haven't played Melee. I haven't played Ninja Gaiden Black. I did play Understand. Haven't played 868 back. Haven't played Blueprints. Haven't played Yogurt Commercial 3. Haven't played Elephant Fantasy Flipside. Haven't played this. Haven't played this. Haven't played this. Haven't played this. So like most of them I have not played, and we're halfway through the year almost. And the ones that I haven't played are the ones that I know I'm going to want to spend a lot of time with, like Melee, 868 back, Blueprints, Ninja Gaiden Black. I'm just so screwed on this, but it's because so many good games have come out this year, man. I thought this would be a normal year. I thought this would be a normal year of video games where like, a few good things come out, but mostly I can kind of ignore them. But this has been such an insane good year for me. Like I spent like 50 hours playing Caramel Action almost. I've spent like 50 hours playing Theta and Paradox. I spent like maybe 30 hours playing EmuROM. What else? And like those were all really good games. Like Minnow just came out. What else? Oh yeah, Derelict Star, of course. Laney Game. I mean, that's not a particularly long one, but I spent probably 10 hours playing Laney Game, 20 hours playing Derelict Star. Like, dog. Yeah. I mean, someone asked me. Usually when someone asks me like what games am I looking forward to, my answer is like, there's a couple things. Like I probably said Order of the Sinking Star and I probably said 868 back, right? But at that time I didn't know that those games were both coming out in 2026, but which by the way, Order of the Sinking Star and 868 back, Those are both 2026 games. Like, I'm gonna play like 500 hours of both those games, man. That's like enough gaming for a year easily. And all this other good stuff has come out too. But yeah, I normally say like one or two things that I'm looking forward to, right? But I'm aware that usually the games that get me most excited, usually a lot of my favorites of the year are like they do just come out of nowhere. Like I was vaguely aware of Derelict Star, but I wasn't really looking forward to it. Definitely was not aware of Laney Game. Was not really was not. I had seen the trailer for EmuROM, but wasn't really sure if it would be my jam or not. Oh yeah, Mugenics. Yeah, I haven't even tried Mugenics, but it looks interesting. I'm not sure if it'll totally be my thing, but if it is, that's another 500 hours right there. Yeah, it's just been crazy. I'm sure there's stuff I'm forgetting too. That I've enjoyed this year. So yeah, I feel like I'm not to blame. I feel like it was unfair the way that 2026 did it to me. Also, I've just been trying to do some make some life progress and make some YouTube channel progress and stuff like that. But yeah, amazing year. What else was I gonna say? They killed Metal Slug. Yeah, they killed Metal Slug. Let's look at that. Metal Slug Awakening, is that what it is? No. Metal Slug is back. No. Where's the new Metal Slug roguelike mobile game revealed? Yeah. This is I mean, they've been doing Metal Slug spin-offs for a while, right? Which this is just old Metal Slug footage, right? So it's not too surprising, and it's not necessarily the end of the world. I mean, if they're trying to, here you go. The fact that they're calling it Metal Slug Reimagined is a little bit offensive, I think. But I don't know if it's necessarily the end of the world. Like, they could still be trying to do good things with the mainline series while doing this. I'll try to be optimistic. I don't know. Let's see. Oh yeah, so you're sure there are trends missing? Yeah. So this is the second tier list like this that I've done. I already did one with 20 different trends on it. If you go back to the previous streams, and we'll probably do another one after this one, honestly, because people suggested a lot of good ones. If you have more suggestions, by the way, feel free to drop them in the Discord so that I can go back to them later. Fishing minigame is one of the ones that was suggested, and that I will do. Or wait, did I have that on? Did I have that on the current one? I can't remember, but I'll do it at some point, one way or the other. Yeah, probably the most important game to come out in the last 5 years. 868 back, maybe. I think Baby Steps is up there for me. Baby Steps is really up there. Tunic, I don't know. Tunic is a little bit too like. I don't want to say it's derivative because it has its own thing, but it's not making a new cat. It's not like, yeah, it's not the same as something like Baby Steps, even though I like it more than Baby Steps probably. But yeah. Let's see. 868 back really killed my want to go back to Mugenics, but I do really dig Mugenics. Yeah, dude. You just can't compete with a bro game. When you really get into it, you just can't compete. You can't compete with that. I'm hoping that. I mean, a big part of why I'm putting off both Mugenics and 868 back is because I think both those games are going to get significant updates over time. Definitely Mugenics will, but it seems pretty likely that 868 back will as well. I mean, if you think about Michael Bro's previous roguelikes, 868 Hack got a DLC 4 years later. Imbroglio got a lot of DLC over several years. Syncopause got a lot of updates, but then a major update like 4 years later. And all of those like really elevate those games for me. And in all cases, I think it would be probably nice. In all those cases, I think it would be better to just have played the game with all those updates from the beginning. Not that you shouldn't go and buy 868 back right now if you're interested in it. You absolutely should. These updates that I'm talking about are more like the Syncopause update, especially. Like most people would not consider it a major update because it mostly affects stuff that you're not really going to be that familiar with until you're like 100 hours into the game. But anyway, just because there are so many games that I want to play right now that have been coming out, and that doesn't seem like it's stopping anytime soon with Order of the Sinking Star coming out soon. I feel like it makes sense to put off on starting 868 back, since it might get major updates, and definitely Mutagenics will. Do I have Bullet Heavens as a trend? No. That's a good one. I mean, it's a good one to drop straight into F tier. Actually, ooh, yeah, I might should do that. I'll hold my thoughts, but yeah, post that in the Discord if you can. Yeah, I haven't really looked at the Crazy Taxi thing, because here's the thing about Crazy Taxi. I love Crazy Taxi. I love Crazy Taxi, the original. I haven't even played very much of 2. Like, I haven't even played very much of the old sequels, let alone like some new thing like this. It's just the things that make it really great. So, okay. Obviously Crazy Taxi has very basic appeal of you're in a crazy taxi. And you're the pedestrians have to dodge you, and you're almost running over the people you're picking up, and they're getting mad at you for driving crazy. And it's got the kind of San Francisco theme, and it's got the flying in the air like this, and it's got all these very basic things that make the game immediately appealing. But the thing that makes the game really special to me, and that makes me want to play it for many hours like I have, is all the tech. Like, it feels like they really thought about Crazy Taxi. I don't know if they exactly thought about it this way, but it's the way that the tech works in Crazy Taxi is like it's exactly what you would design if you were thinking about the racing game genre. Like, you can kind of think of Crazy Taxi as like a weird racing game. And if you were thinking about the racing game genre and how to like bust it wide open and make it so much more interesting. Like, one thing about racing games is you never really want to slow down very much. You never want to stop. And that makes sense for most racing games, but in Crazy Taxi, they made it so that you often want to start and stop, right? And they leaned into that. So that creates more variety it creates more variety in a certain sense than a normal racing game where you're just going around the same track over and over again. And obviously the passenger routing and stuff does more with that to make more variety about where you're going. But the key thing about Crazy Taxi, the original, is that they lean into what they're doing with all the starting and stopping by having all this tech that makes it more fun to start and stop. Starting and stopping in most racing games would be annoying. Like, it would be boring and uninteresting, and you wouldn't want to do that. But they make all this tech that makes you get a crazy boost when you first start up from a stop really quickly, slow down really quickly, like things. you are incentivized to like crash into certain walls and a certain like drift and then crash into a wall to like stop. There's all this interesting stuff. It's in the details, is what I'm saying. It's in the details of how they designed the driving in that game. And I just don't believe that a modern development team. I mean, if the original designer were involved, maybe. If the original director or something were involved, maybe. But I don't think that's the case. I think I would have heard about that if that were the case. And yeah, it mostly just looks like what you'd expect it to be. So I'm out. OG director is involved? In what capacity? Okay, I don't know. Maybe I should be paying more attention to it, but I don't know. He's directing again. Okay. I don't know who the original director is. I'm curious if he's done. How do I? What's the best way to do this? This. What else has he done since then? Because I was really impressed with. I was really impressed with Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, which they brought back the original director for that, right? But he had been making games. He had been making games that were very much not in line with mainstream sensibilities for his entire career. He had made the Ghosts and Goblins game for the PSP at least. That's somewhat recently at least. I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Like it's a little bit different than this. And even Crazy Taxi 2, I didn't get the sense that it was as good as the first game, but maybe I need to spend more time with it. But yeah. This doesn't look like a I'm concerned about this gap from 2001 to or 2002 producer on Crazy Taxi 3 until now. Yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't bother me too much. I think the original. I don't think this is really going to displace Crazy Taxi in video game culture or in the discourse or anything like that. If anything, this is going to get people to remember that Crazy Taxi exists and is awesome, the original. Yeah, I haven't played Crazy Taxi 3. I heard it was not as good. Can't remember why. I'm I'm so anti-sequel pilled, to be honest with you. Very few designers know how to make a good sequel. Just a lot of games are good partially by accident. And I wonder how much of that is the case with Crazy Taxi 1. Yeah, that makes sense, Aloe. Well, we'll see. I will not be playing it unless I hear good things from people I trust, probably. There's enough good games. Enough good games for me to play, as I said earlier. Bro, Order of the Sinking Star looms on the horizon. All right. I'm going to end the stream now. Thanks for hanging out. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.